All right, if you watched the first video, we showed you how to download and install the custom connector for Power BI from Langner OTbase and how to do some basic configuration, including changing the relationship direction on the data model. In this next video, we're going to provide some tips and guides on building your first report, which will include basic stats about device type, vendor, model, location, device table, and then we'll hyperlink to device profiles in OTbase from that table. And this table will kind of serve as the baseline report for a lot of things we do later with like the vulnerability dashboard or an obsolescence dashboard, compliance and software. Because as we build those dashboards, what we're going to ultimately do is want to have the selections within those data visualizations. We want that to slice our data table that we're going to build in this video to drill down to show you only the relevant devices or vulnerabilities or whatever. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab our data. So we went through this before. We go to get data, we select other, we're going to grab OTbase, and then from here we're going to input our data. In order to give you the best data sample here, what we're going to do is grab a few different locations, but in this video we're only going to do devices because for the purpose of this demonstration we just want to show how to build the basic report that includes the device data. So we don't need the vulnerabilities or anything like that, and because we're not doing that, we don't need to do anything with CVE priority, and we're not going to do anything with location because we want to again bring all of our location data so you can add location to a column on the report, and that can be used for filtering the data later on. So we're going to go ahead and say okay. It might ask me to authenticate, it might not. I've already authenticated very recently, so we probably won't need to. Okay, the data table selection screen has come up. For this one, we're just going to do the devices table. We'll skip all the other stuff, compliance, connections, monitors, tags, and we'll load the device data. Again, this might take a little bit because we're now not filtering by any location whatsoever. I'm going to pull all the data that I have in my OTbase instance, which is probably going to be quite a bit. So we're going to just go ahead and punch out of the video here, and we will come back shortly once the data has been loaded. All right, so now the data has finished loading. We have all of our devices in the data pane over here on the right. Again, expanding that shows all of the columns that you have available to you, and then you can go over to the left-hand side over here and click on Table View if you want to review that data further. You can see our device IDs, our documentation, all of this other information that we have in our OTbase instance. Great. So that's the data. We don't need to do anything with the model here because since we just did devices, there's no relationships that matter. So the purpose of this video again was to build just a simple report that shows the device type, the model, things like that, so that when we later build visualizations, charts and whatnot based on that data, we can cross-slice that visual, that report visual, down to show only the subset of devices based on the interactions we're making with the various widgets on our dashboard. So the first thing we want to do is just come over here to our visualizations pane. This is where all of our visualization types live. We have all sorts here. We have stacked bar charts, we have clustered bar charts, we have filled map, we have pie charts. For this one, we're going to do table. Very simple. There we go. Let's go ahead and expand that table and make it full screen for now. We won't keep it like that long term, but we will here. And then we're going to start just adding data to that. So as you can see here, what it takes as data is columns. So let's say we want to see device ID first. Okay, great. Now we have just a column of device IDs. Excellent. Now let's say we want to see maybe we want to see device type. So we're going to grab type. Let's put that next. We can do that. Of course, if we want, we can always rearrange these if we would like. We can also come over here if we really, for the purpose of the chart, if we want to, we can filter on this data based on visualizations we add later. When we click into those visualizations, it will drill through and filter down this map. But if you want to filter at the top level and say like, well, look, I only want to see types in this report, period. All I want to see is actuators. Well, we could come over here and we could use this to select actuators and only see that, or only see L2 switches or desktops or whatever we would like. We're going to leave it as is for now because I want to see the whole data set that we have available to us. So we have the device ID and we have the type. The next thing we'll add is, let's look at the vendor and then the model and the location. So we're going to look at the vendor, which should be in alphabetical order over here. We'll go ahead and add that next. And then we're going to add the model again over here. Drag that in. There we go. To add location, we just drop that in here. Now we have the location. All right, we can see all our location data in there. And then we want to add, let's say we want to take this table and we want to hyperlink it to our actual OTbase data. Well, we can do that by adding the profile to this. Great, but that doesn't quite do it for us because these aren't really hyperlinkable. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do conditional formatting on the profile column, and then we're going to click web URL. So now we have format style, apply to values only. We should base this on the profile. And there we go. Now each one of these should be linked directly to the device ID. So if we select virtual machine, they're going to ask us to log in. That's okay. And now we come to the virtual ID. Okay, so now that we've added all that, I think the next thing we want to do, this looks like a pretty good dashboard. It's just a basic list of what I've decided to add here, my device IDs with the vendor information and all. And I could add anything else I wanted to in here from this chart. I think for the purpose of this video, we don't need to add anything else, but I do want to do some visualization off of this data to show how this will drill down based on that visualization data. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull this down to the bottom, make it about halfway down the page. And of course, you can do all sorts of formatting with these tables if you want to, and that's just simply by coming over here to the format your report. You can look at the wallpaper, the filter pane, all of that good stuff. We're not going to do that here on this particular video, but just wanted to show you can make this look. You can change the background, do a lot of different things with it. So let's say we want to do a count first of all. I like to do a count. Let's do that. We do not need a count that big. Okay, but we're gonna do a count of device IDs. That'll be our kind of baseline big number for this particular chart. So we'll drag the device ID into the fields pane here. We want to click the drop down, and then we're going to do count distinct. Great. So we have 5,021 distinct device IDs. If we want to change the name of that, we can click that drop down again and say rename visual for this field. And we're going to say, we'll just call it device count. Perfect. And there we go, device count. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and say, let's do a pie chart. We don't want to keep that selected when we hit pie chart because that will actually change this chart type. You want to unselect that and then come over and do a pie chart. So we'll do a pie chart. Great, we have that. It's taking up the rest of the page. It's a little too big, so we'll drag it back. Okay, now that we have our pie over here, we're going to go ahead and populate it. The first thing we're going to do is decide what we want to do with this. Well, I think since we already have a running device count and we have our report down here showing everything, let's put maybe like a top 10 by device type. So we're going to do values, type, we're going to do legend type, and you'll see once I add the type to the legend, it's going to change this chart a lot. Now we have the legend with which to work off of and there. But it's quite a bit, and I don't think we really need all of that. So we're going to go to type, and instead of this, we're going to do top in. Let's say we show top 10 only. Okay, and then we're going to do by data field. So top 10 by type, drop that there. And then let's add it to the count. And then we're going to apply the filter. Now you have this filter down by the top 10 only. And we can see our L2 switch, PLC actuator, other RTU, etc. Right? So that looks pretty good. Okay, great. But, you know, what if I want to make this not necessarily a chart like this? I don't think that looks really great as a visualization. You know, aside from the colors, the style, I'm not really liking it too much. So let's change it to a donut chart. There we go. With very little effort, we can change the chart type. All of our values and parameters and filters remain in place. And now we have a better looking chart. We're going to go ahead and change that chart name from count of type to top 10 by type. There we go. Top 10 by type. So that's because we have to come over here to the general section and adjust the title here. There we go. Top 10 by type. Anytime we want to do another chart like this, we can simply just drag another donut chart over and do it that way. Or we can pick another chart altogether if we want. Like let's say we want to do a top 10 by vendor. All right. Well, let's do a just a stacked bar chart. That looks pretty easy. And then we'll do along the x-axis, we'll do the vendor, count of vendor. That's perfect. And then along the y-axis, we'll do the vendor name. There we go. We don't really need to do too much here with the filtering because it's not intrusive in my opinion already. But let's say we want to do top 10 by vendor. We could do that the same way we did the other one. We just do top 10 by vendor count, and then we can make this chart a little bigger if we want. And now we have our top 10 by vendor. Great. And the cool thing about all of these charts that we're adding in here, apart from the fact that we can resize them, we can reformat, we can change colors, we can do all that cool stuff. But everything we interact with here on this, it's going to slice through this table. And this is what I was talking about in the initial installation video, why it's so important that we manage those relationships correctly. It's not necessary here because I'm only using one table, the devices table. But if I was building these visualizations off of multiple different data points, pulling things from compliance, from vulnerabilities to build one dashboard, you want all of those tables to be talking to each other so that bidirectionality in the table relationships is very important. But we don't need that here. But what we have here is the ability to click into any of these filters that we've created, any of these counts, and it will filter the rest of the visualizations accordingly. So let's say I want to see only all of my Rockwell automation devices. There we go. You can now see within each one of these types how many of those proportionally are of the Rockwell Automation type. We can also see the total device count of Rockwell Automation as the vendor, and it filters the chart down here to only show those as well. So if I were to flip-flop this chart around, sort by vendor, descending, ascending, you can see that works correctly. It's always Rockwell Automation, Allen Bradley. I could do the same with Cisco. I could do the same with 788. And you'll know everything is correct on your chart when you look at this count, 788, and it matches the count over here. Cisco, 735, 735. This is working as expected. So that all looks great, right? And then we can do other things. If we wanted to add similar counts, we could do, any kind of data point that's important to us. I can add up here as either a count or some sort of chart, clustered chart, donut chart, whatever I want to do, whatever you want to do. These dashboards are totally customizable. You can customize all of the banding of the stacked bar chart, the colors of your top 10 by type, your banding down here, create your themes, do whatever you want to do to make it look most appropriate for your particular organization and what is generally acceptable at that particular organization. Yeah, and lastly, let's check out if we want to do like a chart that shows the end of, or the stage that those types, various types of devices are on. So let's say the y-axis is the x-axis is the type. Let's say the y-axis is the count of the stage. There we go. And let's do the stage as the legend. Okay. But we actually don't want to do stage. Let's back up. Let's get that out of there. So we're actually going to do life cycle. That would give us the more appropriate data that we're looking for here. And there we go. So now within this chart, we can unselect that, get everything back to where it was. Okay, good. Now we have the legend up here showing the life cycle of these. We have active, discontinued, end of life, etc., phase out. And then we have the stacked column chart here showing what comprises these counts as far as the life cycle of those devices. And we can, of course, move this legend around. We can go back and rename the visual. Again, we've already seen how to do that, but let's say we just want to say life cycle stage. There we go. And then count of over here on the left. We can do that on the screen here on count of life cycle. We can rename that and say count. Just keep it simple. Here we have device type. Great. There we go. Pretty easy to do that. And then if we wanted to, we could actually break this up into, you could almost do two separate charts where you just have a stage, like a report type chart down here. For example, we could say, let's do a report chart down here. And let's say we want to add just something that we can use to filter off of here. So let's do our life cycle. There we go. Active, discontinued, end of life. Great. Now I want to filter this visual, all the visuals, to only show those particular devices that are in the selected life cycle. So I hope this was a pretty good video for demonstrating the basic capabilities of how to build a dashboard. Obviously, with Power BI, you can do incredible things with dashboards, and every organization, every user will have their own method for doing this and their own desired visualization and everything. But this gives you an idea, at least, of how to get started building a pretty simple dashboard, with a report down here at the bottom showing all of of your device data. You have some counts rolling up to the top here, your top 10 by type, count of vendor by vendor, which we left that like that, but I'm going to go ahead and change it now because I don't like the way that looks. So we're going to go back here to the visual itself, and we're going to take, what is that, the count of vendor, and we'll just say count by vendor. Perfect. And now we have the count by vendor listed up there. And what's interesting is each one of these charts functions differently. So you'll notice that over here, you might adjust the title on the general tab. It's not the same for the stacked bar chart. I don't know why. It's just not. Although it is here now. It's showing to me. So we want to say top 10 vendors by vendors. There we go. Perfect. Now we have everything looking nice, and we could put backgrounds and make this all nice and pretty and everything, but I leave that up to you. For now, you at least have a basic idea of how to create a basic dashboard and how it all interacts with each other to drill down the data in interesting ways and allow you to get a really great visualization of your OTbase inventory. All right, thank you.